Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a fascinating trip back in time. We're going to explore one of the most contentious financial debates in history.
Right. The turbulent and often, well, gut-wrenching attempts by nations to return to the gold standard after World War I just shattered the old order.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is
Exactly. So it became this clash between the desire for rigid, immovable discipline, which gold represented, and the absolute need for operational flexibility, to handle the brutal economic realities of a new modern world.
right.
This history, it really helps us understand how quickly technical monetary policy can reveal its ethical side.
So why gold? I mean, why did this shiny heavy metal become such an obsession? Why couldn't they just wipe the slate clean, invent something new?
The sources point right to psychology, the psychology of survival.
Right. When everything's shaken to its core, what people fear most isn't just being poor.
No.
It's the loss of any reliable anchor.
Yeah.
It's the total lack of certainty. And gold, I mean, it fits that role perfectly. It's rare, it's physical.
It's universally recognized.
It becomes the symbol of permanence.
Right.
The one thing people instinctively cling to when everything else is just floating away.
And this leads to a really crucial philosophical distinction the source material makes. Are people honoring the nature of value itself, or are they just worshiping the symbol of that nature?
That's a great way to put it.
Gold definitely enforces discipline. I mean, it forces governments to make hard choices because their spending is immediately constrained.
Sure.
But that framework can quickly become this powerful shared collective faith. And that makes it politically and psychologically almost impossible to abandon, even when war debts, new trade balances demands a change.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is the moment John Maynard Keynes, the towering economic figure of the era, steps in.
And calls gold a barbaric relic.
A barbaric relic. And the document is so clear on this. Keynes wasn't insulting the periodic table. He was pointing out the staggering human cost, the cost of that decision to preserve the symbol above all else.
That is the heart of his critique. He argued that when you force a sophisticated industrial global economy to be tied to a finite physical thing,
A fixed supply of gold.
right, the existing supply of gold, then society must consciously pay for that rigidity. And the price is paid in, severe suffering, mass unemployment, prolonged recession. You are creating a recession on purpose.
Just to keep a promise.
Just to keep faith with an old rule.
And this leads right into the ethical trap that the source material lays out so well. The discipline of the system, the commitment to that fixed gold to currency ratio. It was often confused with human morality. The central bankers at the time, they saw maintaining that parity as like an act of virtue.
A moral good.
But wait a minute. If maintaining that exchange rate was financial morality, isn't there an argument that abandoning it was, immoral? Didn't that discipline reassure creditors and keep global commerce running?
That's the perfect devil's advocate position, and it's one the sources tackle directly. They warn against confusing that systemic discipline with actual moral correctness. It's a very dangerous leap to confuse nominal stability, the stable price of gold, with the stability of life for millions of people. We see these decisions in history that look, on a ledger, fiscally beautiful, but are just toxic in reality.
So what was the practical problem? I mean, how bad was it?
To understand the sheer scale of it post-WWI, you just have to look at the math. War requires massive spending. Nations printed huge amounts of paper money. They expanded credit like crazy to pay for weapons.
So the money supply swelled up.
Dramatically. But the gold supply, of course, did not swell up to match. It stayed fixed. So when these nations decided they had to return their currency to the old pre-war exchange rate with gold, they faced two profoundly painful roads.
And this brings us to what I think is the source's most powerful and, frankly, sobering insight. A principle that applies everywhere. Currency is the distribution of pain.
That's it.
The entire debate over the gold standard was, at its heart, a debate about who. Who across the economy would bear the burden of the war and the reconstruction?
Exactly. So let's detail those two painful options that every nation faced.
Okay.
Option 1, the painful road, deflation. This meant deliberately forcing the entire domestic economy to contract.
How do you even do that? You can't just unprint money.
Well, you use the tools you have. Dramatically high central bank interest rates. This instantly raised the cost of credit, choking off all borrowing. As credit tightened, businesses couldn't expand, investment just dried up.
And prices and wages had to fall.
Massively, which is an incredibly painful process. The result was widespread business failures, foreclosures, and huge persistent unemployment. This was the choice of pain, done to uphold the nation's so-called financial honor.
And then there was option 2, which the source calls the humiliating road, devaluation.
Yes. This meant accepting the new, inflated reality. Instead of forcing the economy back down to meet the gold, they would just officially adjust the ratio. They'd say our currency is now worth, for example, half the gold it was before the war.
Which is basically breaking the old promise.
It absolutely is. And while it meant less immediate domestic pain and unemployment, it was devastating to institutional trust. It was seen as cheating your creditors, wiping out the savings of anyone who had believed in you, and just tarnishing the central bank's reputation for discipline.
And you can see the consequences so starkly in the sources. Countries like Britain that chose deflation to keep the exchange rate honorable. They ended up with a decade of persistent unemployment, sluggish industry, stagnant growth. They saved the ratio, but nearly destroyed their actual economy.
Right. And conversely, you had countries that slid toward massive inflation and devaluation, with Germany being the most catastrophic example.
Yeah.
And the sources stressed that the loss of belief in the actual paper money, that fractured society faster and more violently than the economic failure alone.
Yeah.
Once faith in currency is just incinerated, social cohesion completely collapses.
So now we have to talk about the fascinating anomaly here, which was the United States. While Europe was struggling with this awful choice, the U.S. had a much easier time.
A distinctly easier time. The U.S. had a massive, unique advantage. Gold flowed into the country during the war.
Right, from trade.
From huge trade surpluses, and because global capital was looking for a safe haven. So while Europe was desperately short on gold, the U.S. was effectively sitting on a pile of it.
Which makes that poker game analogy from the sources so vivid.
It's perfect. The international gold standard broke down precisely because too much gold ended up in one place. When one player holds nearly all the chips, the game just stops being self-regulating. It grinds to a halt.
And this forced the U.S. Federal Reserve into a very modern and maybe a little cynical action. They couldn't be seen abandoning the standard.
Of course not.
So their actions were described as extensively realistic. They publicly supported gold, but at the same time, they found ways to neutralize the effect of all that gold inflow on their domestic credit.
This is such a crucial moment in monetary history. It's the birth of what we call sterilization. Under the classical gold rules, if gold flows in, the central bank is supposed to let the money supply expand, causing inflation.
But they didn't want that.
The Fed realized if they followed the rules, they'd destabilize their own economy. So they started to sterilize the inflow. As gold came in, the Fed would simultaneously sell government bonds on the open market.
Which pulls money out of the system.
Exactly. They were essentially locking the gold away, stopping it from automatically expanding credit and causing runaway inflation. This act meant they were no longer just gold keepers. They were becoming active, flexible economic managers.
Which takes us right to the ultimate conclusion of this whole historical conflict. The central banks learned they had to manage the economic cycle. The question that remains is gold a necessary discipline, or is it an arbitrary prison?
And the answer is, it's both. It just depends on who holds the key and what price society is willing to pay.
So what does this all mean for us today? We've looked at these currency wars from a century ago, but the real power of this deep dive is in the general principles these sources reveal about, managing risk and discipline in any complex system.
Yeah, let's break down the nature of money into 3 layers, which give us these core life lessons. Layer 1, money is organized belief.
Okay.
Paper money has no real value. It lives entirely on the faith that other people will accept it. The gold anchor, it just provided a powerful, simple story to build that belief on. But the story itself doesn't create prosperity.
It creates a framework.
A rigid framework that can either support you or suffocate you.
Then layer 2.
Layer 2. Inflation and deflation are mechanisms of redistribution. Monetary policy is never neutral. Inflation helps debtors and governments, but it crushes savers and people on fixed salaries.
And deflation is the opposite.
It chokes borrowers and businesses because their real debt goes up, which leads directly to unemployment. The debate then and now is always about who carries the burden.
And layer 3, the most philosophical one, this is the eternal battle between the rule versus discretion.
Right. The strict adherents, they saw the gold standard as a necessary fence against reckless government spending. They believed the only way to save people from future crises was to commit to the fixed rule now, no matter what.
But Keynes and others, the ones arguing for discretion, they saw that modern complexity demands flexibility. They believed that if you stick rigidly to a number, you sometimes have to sacrifice millions of people's livelihoods just to preserve a theoretical ratio.
It's the morality of the system versus the morality of real life.
So if we transition these big ideas into actionable principles for you, the listener, we see 4 practical takeaways from all this.
Yeah, let's start with the first one. Don't deify a standard.
What does that mean?
We all do it. We constantly seek a gold standard in our careers or our relationships, an invariant rule, a person, a formula that promises safety. But the sources show that if that standard doesn't update when reality changes, it stops being a stabilizing anchor and becomes a chain.
The second one is map the pain. Don't just ask if a policy or a business decision is right or efficient. Always ask the follow-up questions. Who benefits? Who suffers? Who's carrying the long-term risk?
True awareness starts when you look past the beautiful slogans and actually see the map of pain behind the decision. If you don't know who is paying for your decision, you really haven't fully understood it.
Third, discipline needs wisdom, not pride. It's so tempting to feel this sense of moral superiority when you're maintaining a strict rule, like those central bankers clinging to the old ratio.
Absolutely.
But if the functional cost of that pride is prolonged unemployment or a fracturing society, then it's not really discipline. It's the religious, unthinking worship of a number. Discipline should serve people, not the other way around.
And finally, 4, balance long-term goals with present reality. This is the essence of Keynes' wisdom. Don't let the abstract long-term become a cold excuse for inaction or cruelty in the present.
In the long run, we are all dead.
That's the idea. If we only rely on the long run to fix deep problems, we might find that too much human suffering has happened before that future finally arrives. Wisdom is protecting the foundation without crushing the people standing on it.
So the ultimate choice isn't rigidity or flexibility.
No, it's to choose wisdom. Use discipline when you need to build trust. Adjust when you need to prevent suffering. But the essential ingredient has to be transparency. Trust in a system comes not from pretending there is no pain, but from being transparent and fair about who bears the consequences.
And that barbaric relic moment. It's not really about the medal itself, is it? It's the moment humanity hands over the fate of millions of lives to some external, fixed anchor, whether it's gold or a rigid corporate policy or some unthinking ideology.
Exactly. It happens simply out of fear of the freedom and the intellectual responsibility it takes to manage reality. It's when we fear complexity so much that we just wish a simple, shining object could solve it all for us.
And that profound historical conflict taught the world a lesson, it seems, we have to keep learning.
That currency is not merely a technical mechanism, it is profoundly ethical. And true ethics must always be coupled with compassion and a commitment to telling the truth about the cost of the system.
Thank you for sharing these sources and for joining us on this deep dive into the philosophy and pain of the gold standard. We look forward to exploring the next concept with you.